Now, regarding genital herpes, it is a pandemic of the most extreme degree, and there is no question about the seriousness of this. I've been sounding the warning for many years. It has become, it's particularly in the United States, a complete pandemic, and call it casual sex, call it what you will, but if a person has sexual intercourse in this manner with this person or that person, then there's a risk, even almost 1 in 3 chance that it's gotten that severe that one will pick up, whether you know it or not symptomatically, the genital form of herpes. Now, it's a very serious infection because it dives in intracellularly inside the cell nucleus, and then it strips itself out from its protein coat in that process, so therefore it can't be detected. There's no protein, there are no antigens by the immune system, and so it's inside in a bizarre form that no one can understand and no one can even visualize, this inside the cell nucleus, where it particularly prefers the various condensations known as ganglia, nerve ganglia, condensations of nerves inside the sacral plexus, inside the spinal cord region, these condensations of nerve tissue where it stays dormant. Now, it's just not worth it. It's such a serious thing. It's such a disaster that one has to think about prevention. One has to think about the consequence of these kinds of sexual acts. It's just not, just for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, it's just not worth it. It's important that people do not engage in these types of interactions. So it's not easy. The lust for the sexual act is the most powerful of all emotional or hormonal powers, but you've got to be vigilant and not engage where you could get transmission, and then it'll become an extreme pandemic to the nth degree, where even up to 50% of all people will be infected. And what are you going to do? Once you get genital herpes, it's a tough bird. But I have succeeded in helping many hundreds of people now with my protocol. And this really is what this video is about. In fact, all these types of videos is to give hope that there could be a remedy, the illegal word cure, but that there could be some way to completely resolve an illness. And I've made that discovery here. So I have a protocol which engages the use of a very powerful super strength form of oil of wild oregano, using a super strength form with an average carbachol of 60 to 75%. That's plenty good. But the main thing is to have a super strength concentration. The main thing is actually to have an edible type of oil of wild oregano that you can take on a daily basis. Now, you cannot say that about all oil of oreganos. There's 80 different species of the mint family group. So you could have oreganos that are actually marjoram species. You can have thymus species. You can have some that are too high in thymol. You cannot take them daily because they cause hepatotoxicity. So if we're going to go the anti-genital herpes protocol, it's going to have to be in a format of an edible daily use wild oregano oil, because you're going to take big doses. So in this case, it's going to be 40 drops 3 times a day. That's the minimum. And then ideally 80 drops 3 times a day, maybe 4 times a day, maybe 5 times a day. But of course, when you're taking that kind of dosage, this is an antiseptic. It's antiviral, antifungal, antibacterial, but it's going to also have some damage on the good bacteria. So at that dosage, you got to take a probiotic. I like the Ecologic 500 strain, which has got about 8 different pathogen, different bacteria that well implants into the gut. And I would take that at night as part of the protocol. But the kingpin, if I had to do one thing, would be the oil of wild oregano edible daily use. High mountain, hand-picked wild material. The second thing that's really essential now, and this is a fairly new addition, is a combination of hemp extract, hemp plant extract, or we say cannabis from industrial agricultural hemp, combined with supercritical. This is very important. So supercritical hemp combined with supercritical wild oregano oil, CO2 extracted, because the terpenes are intact in the supercritical form, many of these cannabis extracts are heat treated. They're not going to work in this case for the genital herpes or oral type 1 so-called herpes, but the supercritical cannabis with supercritical oregano is very high not only in terpenes, including beta-caryophyllene, which is very antiherpetic and anti-inflammatory and also neuroregenerative, but also crucially the dark green quercetin and other green-based flavonoids or flavonoids from greenery, which are so high in the supercritical fraction, these flavonoids, which are extremely antiherpetic. So are, by the way, bioflavonoids from citrus, if you can handle citrus, because sometimes citrus can cause breakouts of oral herpes and so on because of reaction, histamine, and so on. So if you can handle citrus flavonoids, add them to it. But the flavonoids in this, combined with the fact that it's a raw oregano, does very, very well with the cannabis, anti-pain, remember, anti-inflammatory, neuroregenerative, which you need because the herpetic agents destroy neurons with the oregano. Then finally, another discovery I made, both for genital and oral or cold sore herpes. And I had this happen to me. I had a very bad case of a cold sore from stress, family stress type stuff or whatever, popped out really big. So painful, but it was partly because at that time I wouldn't hesitate to eat occasionally nitrated meats. So I remember this back then, 20-some years ago. And the nitrates combined with the stress popped that baby out. By the way, you don't want any nitrates in your diet if you've got genital herpes. You don't want any arginine also from the nuts and seeds. But anyway, so emulsified wild propolis. Emulsified wild propolis, fantastic stuff. Emulsified there, and the oregano oil there as well. Under the tongue. That's 40 drops 3 times a day. Or 80 drops 3 times a day. Now, if you add, so that's the bedrock. Real powerful. If you want to add something that's spice, maybe black seed oil. High quality, freshly cold pressed black seed oil, adding to the protocol. And then if you want to take it to the other extreme, you can perhaps add some whole food fatty salmon oil for the vitamin A and D, and also some whole food vitamin C. I like the Purely C, of course, for that, because it's camu. And for the whole food fatty salmon oil, I always do and I'm not making any claims on that as a cure, so I'll just tell you that I like the Polar Power as a whole food source of vitamin A, which is important for the immune system, and D, to protect against these invasions. And then finally, you have to do the topical. Oh no, you don't want to put the oregano there. You could maybe if you dilute it 20-1 with olive oil, but it's topical on sacrum in the pit of the low back. So you would take this oil of oregano and scrub that sacrum, scrub until it gets hot. Scrub the pit of the low back, scrub up and down the spine, but mainly the sacral area and the lumbosacral and all the way up to about L1, if you will. So that's my basic protocol. The oil of wild oregano in a super strength form. Then the more complex protocol, all 3. I've had many people who prevailed against this horrific disease. Adding in black seed oil if you wish, tablespoon or 2 a day. For general health, I like Purely C, Polar Power, because you need the ascorbic acids, you need the fatty salmon oil as a source. If you had a cod liver oil, it would be good, but cod liver oil these days is refined, and so they're using synthetic vitamins back in. But when you get the natural vitamin A and D, it does help in prevailing over this terminally corrupt disease.